Kethvarn watched the humans eat their evening meal and felt nothing but pity. They sat in the corner of the mess hall, 5 of them, laughing at something one had said. Their bodies were small and soft. They had no claws, no armor plates, no second heart to keep them alive if the first one failed. The Velrethi children were stronger than these creatures. Yet here they were, aboard the coalition vessel Horizon's Edge, treated as equals in the Great Alliance. It was politics. Kethvarn understood this. The humans had joined the Galactic Council only 40 years ago, but they spread fast. They built colonies on worlds that other species had abandoned as too dangerous. They traded with everyone and made enemies of no one. The Council wanted them happy, so the Council pretended they mattered in military affairs. Kethvarn stood nearly 8 feet tall. His gray skin was thick enough to stop a blade. His forearms could tear metal apart. He had killed 30 enemies in close combat and earned the rank of shield captain in the Velrethi fleet. And now his commander had assigned him to work with the humans. It was an insult wrapped in diplomatic language. "You will liaise with the human contingent," High Marshal Zithran had told him. "Learn their methods. Build trust between our peoples." What Zithran meant was, keep them out of the way when real fighting starts. Kethvarn walked toward the human table. They looked up at his approach, and he saw no fear in their eyes. This surprised him. Most species showed some reaction to a Velrethi warrior. These humans just smiled. "Shield Captain," said the one called Daniel Carter. He was their commander, a male in his middle years with gray in his hair and calm brown eyes. "Join us?" Kethvarn sat. The chair was too small, built for smaller bodies, but he made it work. "I am assigned to your unit for this mission." "We know," said the female beside Carter. Her name was Ashley Morgan. She was younger, with short dark hair and a face that rarely showed expression. "We're glad to have you." Kethvarn doubted this. He had seen how other species looked at his kind. The Velrethi were feared, respected, but not liked. They were too large, too strong, too proud. "What do you know about our destination?" He asked. Carter pushed a datapad toward him. "Colony World. Sigma Veldris 3. Mining operation, about 12,000 residents. They sent a distress call 6 hours ago, then went silent. The nature of the threat? Unknown. That's why we're going." Kethvarn studied the data. The colony was in the neutral zone, far from any major power. Pirates sometimes operated in such regions, but pirates did not silence entire colonies. This was something else. "Your people," he said, looking at the humans. "You have experience with unknown threats." The one called Ryan Mitchell laughed. He was large for a human, with thick arms and a quick smile. "You could say that. Earth has a long history of things trying to kill us. Your homeworld is dangerous? Everything on Earth wants to eat you, poison you, or crush you," said the 5th human, a female named Megan Turner. She had kind eyes and gentle hands. Kethvarn had learned she was their healer. "We evolved alongside predators, parasites, and natural disasters. Our planet has ice ages, supervolcanoes, and something called the box jellyfish." Kethvarn did not know what a box jellyfish was, but the way Turner said it suggested it was unpleasant. "And yet you are soft," he said. "No natural weapons. No armor." Carter smiled at this. It was not an angry smile. "We made our own weapons. We learned to use our minds instead of our bodies. It worked out okay." Kethvarn wanted to argue, but the ship's alarm interrupted him. Red lights flashed. The voice of the ship's captain, a Mordith named Yilix, filled the air. "All senior staff to the bridge." "Repeat. All senior staff to the bridge. We've received updated intelligence on the Sigma Veldris situation." The humans rose as one, moving with a coordination that surprised Kethvarn. They did not scramble or panic. They simply stood, checked their equipment, and walked toward the door. Carter nodded at him. "Coming, shield captain?" HFY followed. The bridge was crowded when they arrived. Officers from 6 different species stood around the central display, their faces showing various forms of concern. Captain Yilix, a tall being with silver scales and 4 eyes, gestured for silence. "We have identified the threat," Yilix said. "Our long-range sensors detected an energy signature on the colony world. Scholar Pentas has analyzed it." An elderly Velrathi stepped forward. Pentas was ancient, his gray skin wrinkled and pale, but his mind was sharp. He was a keeper of histories, a scholar of things most species had forgotten. "The energy signature matches records from the old war," Pentas said. His voice was quiet, and the bridge grew quieter to hear him. "Records that are 12,000 years old." High Marshal Zithran pushed forward. "Speak plainly, scholar. What are we facing?" Pentas looked at the display, at the small dot that represented the colony world. When he spoke again, his voice held something HFY had never heard from a Velrathi elder. "Fear. A Primarch has awakened." The bridge erupted. Officers shouted questions. Some species had never heard the word. Others, like the Velrathi, knew it too well. HFY felt his 4 hands close into fists. The Primarchs were legends, nightmares. They were beings of impossible power, old when the first civilizations were young. They had ruled the galaxy through terror until 100 species united against them. The war had lasted centuries. Billions had died. In the end, the Primarchs were not killed but sealed away, locked in prisons of space and time. No one knew how to kill a Primarch. No one had ever succeeded. "The colony," HFY said. "The 12,000 people." Pentas shook his head slowly. "If a Primarch has truly awakened, they are already dead. Ors." HFY looked at the humans. He expected to see the same fear that gripped everyone else. Morgan stood with her arms crossed, her face blank. Mitchell was checking his weapon. Turner was reading medical data on a pad, and Carter was watching the display with steady eyes, calculating, planning. "We're still going," Carter said. It was not a question. Zithran turned to him. "Human, you do not understand. A Primarch is not an enemy you can fight. They are gods. Ancient, immortal, powerful beyond measure." Carter met the High Marshal's gaze without flinching. "Good thing we don't believe in gods, then." HFY stared at the human commander. He could not tell if Carter was brave or simply too stupid to understand the danger. Either way, they were going to find out. The colony was burning when they arrived. HFY stood at the viewport and watched the smoke rise from a dozen locations across the settlement. Buildings had collapsed. Streets were torn apart. And somewhere down there, something ancient was waiting. The horizon's edge had joined a small fleet in orbit. 3 coalition warships, carrying soldiers from 8 different species. It should have felt like a powerful force. Instead, looking at the destruction below, it felt like nothing at all. "Sensors show no life signs in the main settlement," Captain Yilix reported. "But there is activity in the underground sections. Possible survivors." High Marshal Zithran studied the tactical display. "We deploy in standard formation. Velrathi shock troops will lead. Support species will follow. Humans will guard the extraction point." HFY saw Carter's jaw tighten, but the human said nothing. This was how it always went. The humans were given safe jobs, kept away from the real fighting. Zithran meant no disrespect. He was simply protecting the weaker allies. The dropships launched. HFY descended with the human squad, assigned to them as liaison. He told himself it was his duty. The part of him wanted to see how they would react when they faced true horror. The first thing he noticed when the ship landed was the silence. A colony of 12,000 should have noise. Machines, voices, life. This place had nothing. Just wind and smoke and the distant sound of something wrong. "Form up," Carter said quietly. His people moved into position without needing more instruction. Morgan took point, her rifle steady. Mitchell covered their left side with a heavy weapon that seemed too large for his body. Turner stayed close to Carter, medical kit ready. They moved through empty streets. Cathvoran had seen death before. He was Velrethi. Death was part of life for his people. But what he saw here was different. Bodies lay in the streets, but they were not simply dead. They were changed, twisted, their faces frozen in expressions of madness, their bodies bent in ways that made no sense. "What happened to them?" Mitchell asked. "The Primarch," Cathvoran said. "Its presence alone can break minds." These people saw it. Their sanity could not survive. Turner knelt beside a body, checking for life, even though there was none. Her face was pale, but her hands were steady. "Some of these wounds are fresh. Whatever did this is still here." A scream echoed from somewhere ahead, not a human scream. Not any sound Cathvoran recognized. It was high and wrong, like metal tearing and children crying at the same time. The Velrethi warriors in the main force had stopped moving. Cathvoran could see them through the gaps between buildings. They stood frozen, their weapons lowered, their four-armed bodies trembling. "What's wrong with them?" Morgan asked. "Fear," Cathvoran said. "The Primarch is projecting fear. It is a weapon for them. They push terror into the minds of their enemies until those enemies cannot fight." Even as he spoke, Cathvoran felt it touching his own mind. A cold pressure, like fingers pushing against his thoughts. He saw visions of his homeworld burning. He saw his family dying. He saw himself alone in darkness forever. His legs wanted to stop moving. His heart wanted to give up. But beside him, the humans kept walking. Carter's face was tight with effort. Morgan's breath came in short gasps. Mitchell's hand shook slightly on his weapon. They were feeling it too. Cathvoran could see the fear in their eyes, but they did not stop. "How?" Cathvoran managed to ask. "How do you keep moving?" Carter glanced at him. "Because stopping won't make it better. Fear doesn't go away if you give in to it. It just wins." They pushed deeper into the colony. The screaming grew louder. They found the source in the central plaza. Creatures that had once been colonists crawled through the rubble. Their bodies were wrong now, stretched and broken, and were made into something new. They moved on too many limbs. Their mouths hung open, making that terrible sound. And behind them, rising above the tallest buildings, was the Primarch itself. Cathvoran had read descriptions in the old texts. He had seen artistic representations in Velrethi temples. None of it prepared him for the reality. Vol single quotes THAXAR was a mountain of darkness given form. Its body shifted and changed, never quite solid, never quite real. Eyes covered its surface, hundreds of them, thousands, all different sizes and colors. They looked in every direction at once. Some of them looked at Cathvoran, and he felt his mind begin to crack. Coalition soldiers were screaming. Some were running. Some had fallen to their knees, their weapons forgotten. A Velrethi warrior, one of the finest Cathvoran had ever served with, was crying like a child. The twisted creatures attacked. Cathvoran raised his weapons and fought. His training took over, pushing past the fear that still clawed at his mind. He cut down 3 of the creatures before something hit him from behind and knocked him to the ground. Claws reached for his throat. Then a blade flashed and the creature fell away. Its head separated from its body. Morgan stood over him, already turning to face the next enemy. "Get up," she said. "We're not done." Cathvoran got up. The humans fought like nothing he had ever seen. They were small and soft and should have died 100 times, but they refused to fall. Mitchell took a wound to his shoulder that would have stopped any Velrathi, but he just switched his weapon to his other hand and kept firing. Turner dragged a wounded alien soldier to cover while shooting at creatures with her sidearm. Carter moved through the chaos like he had been born for it, giving orders, directing fire, keeping everyone alive. The Primarch watched them. Cathvorin felt its attention shift. Those countless eyes focused on the humans, studying them with something that might have been curiosity. Then it spoke. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It was inside Cathvorin's as, inside his chest, inside his soul. It was the voice of ancient things that had existed before stars were born. K-N-E-E-L. Every coalition soldier fell. Cathvorin felt his legs buckle. The command was not a word but a force, a weight that pressed down on his will until it shattered. He dropped to his knees, his weapons falling from his hands. Around him, warriors from a dozen species did the same. Even the strongest among them could not resist. But when Cathvorin looked at the humans, they were still standing. Carter's face was twisted with effort. Blood ran from his nose. His whole body shook with the strain of resistance. But he was standing. All of them were standing. "No," Carter said. Just one word. Quiet. Calmed out, the Primarch's eyes shifted again. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the ancient being laughed. And the sound nearly killed Cathvorin, but through the pain and the terror and the madness, he saw Morgan raise her rifle toward a god, and she smiled. The retreat order came through every communication channel at once. All forces fall back to extraction points. High Marshal Zithran's voice commanded. "The colony is lost. Repeat, the colony is lost. All ships prepare for emergency departure." Cathvorin heard the order but could not make his body obey. He was still on his knees, still trapped by the weight of the Primarch's command. Around him, other soldiers were crawling toward the dropships, their minds broken, their will crushed. The humans had not moved. Carter stood in the center of the plaza, looking up at the ancient being that towered over the colony. His nose was still bleeding. His hands were still shaking. But he had not run. "There's a bunker beneath the administrative building," Carter said. His voice was rough but steady. Sensors showed life signs there. Survivors. "We have orders," Cathvorin managed to say. He hated how weak his voice sounded. "The High Marshal commands retreat." "The High Marshal isn't here." Carter turned to his squad. "Ashley, Ryan, Megan, we're going for those survivors." None of them hesitated. They simply nodded and began checking their weapons. Cathvorin forced himself to stand. His legs trembled but held. "You cannot save them. The Primarch will not allow it." "The Primarch can try to stop us," Mitchell said. He was reloading his heavy weapon with blood-covered hands. The wound in his shoulder was still bleeding, but he did not seem to notice. "Wouldn't be the first god who tried. You speak madness." "Maybe." Mitchell grinned. It was not a happy expression. Humans are good at madness. The Primarch had turned its attention elsewhere, its countless eyes watching the fleeing coalition forces with amusement. The twisted creatures that served it were spreading through the colony, hunting the soldiers who ran too slowly. Screams echoed from every direction. Carter pointed toward a collapsed building. "That's our path. The administrative building is 2 blocks east. We move fast and quiet." Cathvorin looked at the humans. Then he looked at the dropships in the distance, already filling with soldiers who had abandoned the mission. He thought about honor. He thought about duty. He thought about the contempt he had felt for these small, soft creatures. "I will come with you," he said. Carter nodded. "Stay close. Watch our backs." They moved through the ruins. The streets were filled with death. Bodies lay everywhere, some still wearing the expressions of ordinary people going about ordinary lives when the nightmare began. Cathvorin stepped over a child's toy and felt something twist in his chest. "Why do you do this?" he asked as they ran. "Why risk your lives for strangers?" Morgan answered without slowing down. "Because someone has to." That is not an answer. It's the only answer that matters. They reached the administrative building. Half of it had collapsed, but a maintenance shaft led down to the underground levels. Turner went first, her smaller body fitting easily through the narrow opening. The others followed. The tunnels below were dark and filled with dust. Emergency lights flickered, casting red shadows on the walls. Somewhere ahead, Kethvorn heard voices. Living voices. "Survivors," Turner said. 30 meters, maybe less. They moved faster. The bunker was a reinforced room meant to protect colonists during emergencies. Its door was sealed, but lights showed through the small window. Carter knocked in a specific pattern. A voice answered from inside. Scared. Young. "Are you real? Are you really there?" "We're coalition forces," Carter said. "We're here to get you out." The door opened. 32 survivors huddled inside. Most of them were children. A few adults had kept them safe, hiding them when the nightmare began. Their faces showed the marks of terror, but they were alive. A woman rushed forward. "Thank the stars. We thought everyone had abandoned us." "Never," Carter said. "We're getting you out of here." Kethvorn watched the humans work. Turner began checking the survivors for injuries. Mitchell kept watch at the door. Morgan was already planning their escape route. Studying the tunnel maps on her datapad. And Carter knelt before a small child who was crying, speaking soft words that Kethvorn could not hear. "You have done this before," Kethvorn said. "Rescued people from impossible situations." Carter looked up. "A few times. How do you survive?" "We don't think about survival. We think about the people who need help. Everything else comes second." The bunker shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Somewhere above them, the Primarch was moving, searching. Its voice echoed through the tunnels, speaking words that made the survivors scream and cover their ears. "There is nitrogen monoxide escape. There is only submission. Kneel before Volthaxer and no peace." The children cried harder. The adults trembled. Even Kethvorn felt his will weakening again, that cold pressure pushing against his mind. But Carter stood up and faced the ceiling as if he could see the Primarch through the stone and metal. "No," he said again. The same word as before. The same quiet voice. "You cannot resist forever," Kethvorn said. "The Primarch's power is endless. It has broken civilizations. It has crushed armies. How can you stand against that?" Carter looked at him. "Because I felt worse. Impossible. Not impossible. Just human." Carter's voice was strange now, distant but intense. "We carry fear with us every day. We know we're going to die. We know everyone we love will die. We know the universe is vast and cold and doesn't care about us. And we get up every morning anyway. We live anyway. We hope anyway." He gestured at the survivors. "We fight anyway." Kethvorn did not understand. He came from a warrior culture that prized strength and power. Fear was something to be conquered through might. But the humans did not conquer their fear. They simply refused to let it win. Turner finished her work. "Everyone is stable enough to move." Morgan looked up from her map. "I found a service tunnel that leads to the eastern edge of the colony. It comes out near the secondary landing zone. If we're lucky, there might still be a ship." "And if we're not lucky?" Mitchell asked. Morgan shrugged. "Then we walk." Mitchell laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and honest, in the middle of a nightmare. The sound seemed to comfort the children more than any words could have. Carter gathered the survivors. "We move in groups. Stay close to each other. Don't look at anything you don't have to. And no matter what happens, keep moving forward. They began the journey. The tunnels were long and dark. The Primarch's voice followed them, whispering promises and threats. The twisted creatures hunted through the ruins above, searching for prey. But the humans led the way, steady and calm. And HFY found himself believing that they might actually make it. Then the tunnel ahead collapsed, and the Primarch's laughter filled the world. Did you think I would let you go? A wall of darkness blocked their path. Eyes opened in the shadows, hundreds of them, staring at the survivors with hunger and amusement. Carter turned to face the darkness. His weapon was raised, though they both knew it would do nothing against such a creature. Get them out, he told Morgan. Find another way. Dan, that's an order. Morgan grabbed the nearest survivors and pushed them toward a side passage. Mitchell helped, carrying 2 children who were too scared to walk. Turner guided the others, her voice gentle but firm. HFY stayed beside Carter. I will stand with you, he said. Carter glanced at him. For the first time, he smiled. Thank you. The darkness surged forward, and they raised their weapons together. HFY fired his weapon into the darkness and watched the energy disappear without effect. The Primarch's presence filled the tunnel, like water filling a drowning man's lungs. Those countless eyes studied them with ancient patience. It could kill them whenever it wanted. They both knew this. But it was curious now, interested in these small creatures who dared to stand before it. You fascinate me, Volthaxer said. The voice came from the walls, the floor, the air itself. Your companions flee and weep. Your allies break beneath my gaze. Yet you remain. Carter did not lower his weapon. We're stubborn like that. I have existed. Since before your son was born, I have watched. Civilizations rise and fall like waves upon a shore. I have broken gods and kings and emperors. What makes you think you are different? I don't think we're different. I just think it doesn't matter. The darkness shifted, and HFY saw something like a face form in its depths. Ancient and terrible, but also confused. The Primarch was trying to understand these humans, and failing. You know you cannot win. Your weapons cannot harm him. Your strength is nothing against mine. Why do you fight? Because we have people to protect, Carter said. Because we made a promise. Because giving up feels worse than dying. He took a step forward. And because you're not as invincible as you think. The Primarch laughed. The sound shook the walls and filled HFY's mind with visions of death. He saw himself torn apart. He saw his homeworld burning. He saw everything he loved destroyed, while the ancient being watched and laughed forever. But he also saw Carter still standing, still moving forward. Show me, Volthaxer said. Show me this courage you believe sets you apart. The darkness reached for Carter's mind. HFY felt it happen because he was close enough to catch the edges of it. The Primarch was pulling Carter's deepest fears to the surface, dragging them out of hiding, making them real. Carter screamed. HFY had never heard a human scream like that. It was the sound of absolute agony, of a soul being torn open and examined. Carter fell to his knees, his hands pressed against his head, his body shaking. Dan! Morgan's voice echoed from somewhere behind them. She had gotten the survivors to safety and come back. She ran toward Carter, but HFY caught her. Wait, look. Carter was still screaming, but he was also moving. His hands dropped from his head. His body straightened. He looked up at the darkness with tears streaming down his face and blood dripping from his nose. And then he stood. Is that all you have? The Primarch's voice held something new, uncertainty. I showed you the death of your world. I showed you your family burning. I showed you everyone you love dying in agony while you watch. Helpless. I know, Carter said. His voice was raw and broken, but he was still talking. I've seen all of that before. Every night when I close my eyes. Every time I let myself think about what could happen." He wiped the blood from his face. "You think you invented nightmares? We've been living with them since we learned to dream." The darkness pulled back slightly. Those countless eyes narrowed. "You should be broken." "I am broken," Carter said. "We all are. That's the secret you never learned. Humans break every single day. We lose people we love. We fail at things that matter. We watch our dreams die. And then we get up the next morning and keep going anyway. Because broken doesn't mean finished." Kathvorn felt Morgan move beside him. She was reaching for something on her belt, her movements slow and careful. "There is nitrogen monoxide victory here for you," the Primarch said. "Even if you escape, I will hunt you. I will find your world. I will destroy everything your species has built." Carter smiled. It was a terrible smile, full of pain and fury and something else. Something that made even Kathvorn step back. "You know what the funny thing is? Humans have been waiting for something like you for a long time. We've been telling stories about fighting gods since before we could write. We've been preparing for the day something ancient and powerful would come to destroy us." He reached into his jacket. "We were hoping we'd get the chance." He pulled out a device that Kathvorn did not recognize. It was small, no larger than a human fist, covered in symbols that hurt to look at. "This is a quantum singularity core," Carter said. "Your people used something similar to seal your kind away 12,000 years ago. We've been studying the old records. We've been improving the design." The Primarch's eyes widened. "Impossible. That knowledge was destroyed. Nothing is ever really destroyed. It's just waiting to be found." Carter's thumb hovered over a button. "This won't kill you. We both know that. But it will hurt. It will hurt more than anything has hurt you in millennia. You would die, probably." Carter shrugged. "I've made peace with that." For the first time since the beginning of time, a Primarch hesitated. Kathvorn watched the ancient being study this small human. Carter was injured and exhausted and outmatched in every way that mattered. He should have been nothing. He should have been less than an insect before the power of Volfaxer. But he was not afraid. No, that was not right. Kathvorn could see the fear in Carter's eyes. He was terrified. But he was going to press that button anyway. "WII-ta." The Primarch's voice had changed. The command was gone, replaced by something almost like negotiation. "We can discuss this." "No, we can't." Carter pressed the button. The device-activated dot light exploded through the tunnel. Light that was not light. Energy that existed between dimensions. The Primarch screamed, and this time it was a scream of pain rather than power. The darkness thrashed and twisted, pulling away from the source of its agony. Carter flew backward from the force. Kathvorn caught him, his forearms wrapping around the human's fragile body. Morgan was there too, dragging both of them toward the side tunnel behind them. The Primarch burned. "What have you done?" Volfaxer's voice was different now, weaker, wounded. "What are you?" They ran. The tunnel shook as the Primarch raged behind them. But it did not follow. It could not follow. The device had done something to it, had wounded it in ways that even ancient beings could not ignore. They burst out of the service tunnel into weak sunlight. A coalition dropship was waiting. Morgan's call for extraction finally answered. The survivors were already aboard. Mitchell helped them inside, his face pale with worry that turned to relief. Turner was ready with medical equipment, reaching for Carter's broken body. "Is he alive?" Mitchell asked. "He's breathing," Kathvorn said. He laid Carter gently on the floor. "He is the bravest being I have ever known." The ship lifted off through the viewport. Kathvorn watched the colony fall away beneath them. He could see the Primarch now, visible above the ruins, but it was not the terrible thing it had been before. It was smaller somehow, diminished dot and in its countless eyes. HFY saw something he had never expected to see in a being that had existed since before the stars. He saw fear. Daniel Carter woke 3 days after the battle. HFY was there when he opened his eyes. The medical bay of the horizon's edge was quiet, filled with soft lights and the gentle hum of machines. Carter looked around slowly, confusion in his eyes, then understanding. "The survivors?" he asked. His voice was barely a whisper. "Safe," HFY said. "All 32 of them. Your squad is unharmed. Lieutenant Morgan has been threatening the medical staff to let her see you." Carter smiled weakly. "Sounds like Ashley. You did something impossible, Commander. You wounded a Primarch. In 12,000 years of recorded history, no one has done that. We got lucky." "No." HFY leaned forward. "Luck does not explain what I saw. Luck does not explain how you stood when gods commanded you to kneel. I have watched your people closely since we returned. I have spoken with Morgan and Mitchell and Turner. I have asked them to explain how humans can do what you do. What did they say? They said they do not know. They said it is simply what humans are." Carter was quiet for a moment. His eyes found the ceiling, distant and thoughtful. "When I was a child, my grandmother told me stories. Old stories from before humanity went to the stars. Stories about heroes who fought monsters. About ordinary people who stood against darkness, even though they knew they would die." He looked at HFY. "We grew up on those stories. Every human culture has them. Tales of defiance, of sacrifice, of refusing to surrender even when there's no hope. Your people prepared themselves to fight gods. We prepared ourselves to fight anything, because something in us refuses to accept defeat. I don't know if it's evolution or culture or something deeper, but humans have always believed that no enemy is too powerful, no darkness too complete. We've always believed that if we fight hard enough, sacrifice enough, we can change anything." HFY thought about this. "The Vilrathi believe in strength. We worship power because power is what survives. But your power is different. It comes from something I do not fully understand. Stubbornness, mostly?" Carter tried to laugh but winced instead. "And love. The survivors, the children we saved. That's what keeps us going. Not victory or glory or strength. Just the people who matter to us." The door opened and Morgan walked in. She ignored the medical staff who tried to stop her and went straight to Carter's side. Her face was calm, but HFY could see the relief in her eyes. "You're an idiot," she told Carter. "I know. You almost died. Also know that. The council wants to give you a medal." Carter grimaced. "I hate medals. I told them that." Morgan almost smiled. "They want to give you one anyway." HFY left them alone. He walked through the corridors of the horizon's edge, past crew members who looked at him differently now. Word had spread about what happened on the surface. The Vilrathi warrior who stayed behind to fight beside humans. The aliens who thought their allies were weak and learned otherwise. He found himself at the viewport. Looking out at the stars. High Marshal Zithran joined him. "Shield Captain, I have read your report. High Marshal, you speak highly of the humans. Some of your descriptions border on worship. I speak the truth of what I witnessed. Nothing more." Zithran was quiet for a long moment. "My grandfather fought in the last border war. He told me stories of human soldiers. I thought he was exaggerating. Humans were so small, so fragile. How could they be the warriors he described? Now you understand. Now I begin to understand. The Council has decided to strengthen our alliance with Earth. Full military cooperation. No more keeping them at a distance." HFY nodded. "A wise decision. Some of my colleagues disagreed. They feared making humans too powerful. They worried about what would happen if humanity turned against the council. And what did you tell them? Zithran looked at the stars. I told them I would rather have humans as allies than face them as enemies. I told them about your report, about a wounded man standing alone against a god. I asked them to imagine 1 billion such warriors, with all of Earth's resources behind them. They changed their minds. Very quickly. Months passed. Kefvarn returned to his homeworld, to the ancient temples where his ancestors had prayed for thousands of years. He was searching for something, though he was not sure what. The Temple of Histories stood at the edge of a vast desert. Its walls were carved with records from before the Velrathi mastered space travel. Kefvarn walked through dusty corridors, reading inscriptions that few living beings remembered. He found what he was looking for in the deepest chamber. The text was old, older than any other record in the temple. It described the first Primarch War, when 100 species united against the Ancient Ones. It listed the fallen civilizations, the broken armies, the endless deaths, and it mentioned something else. A species from a small world, fragile and short-lived. They came late to the war when all hope was lost. They brought weapons made from desperation and courage. They taught the Alliance to fight without hope, to stand without victory, to die without surrender. Kefvarn, read further. The Primarchs agreed to be sealed away, not because they were defeated, because they encountered something that made eternity feel uncertain. The Small One showed them that some beings cannot be broken. Some beings will fight forever, through death and darkness and despair, until the very concept of defeat becomes meaningless. An elderly keeper approached him. Her voice was thin with age. You seek understanding, Shield Captain. I seek the truth. The truth is older than our records. But there is one more text you should see. She led him to a hidden room, past barriers that had not been opened in centuries. Inside was a single stone tablet, its surface covered in symbols that predated the Velrathi civilization. This was found on an ancient world, the keeper said. A world that was destroyed long before our people existed. The symbols are not ours. They are Primarch writing. Kefvarn looked at the tablet. The symbols had been translated into Velrathi text. Beside each line dot, it was a warning. A message passed from Primarch to Primarch across millennia, carved into stone so it would never be forgotten. The translation was simple. Do not wake the humans. Kefvarn stared at those 4 words for a very long time. The keeper watched him. The Primarchs fear nothing, Shield Captain. They are older than fear. They existed before the concept had meaning. But humans taught them something new. They taught them that some prey bites back. Some prey fights until the end. Some prey would rather destroy everything, including themselves, than kneel to a master. The Primarchs are afraid, Kefvarn said. The Primarchs are terrified. Not of death. They cannot die. But of humans who will never stop. Who will chase them across eternity. Who will find ways to hurt them that no one else would imagine. Who will drag a god down and die smiling, just to prove it could be done. Kefvarn thought of Daniel Carter, standing alone in the darkness, pressing a button that should have killed him. He thought of Ashley Morgan, raising her rifle at an ancient being with nothing but defiance in her eyes. He thought of all the humans he had met, small and soft and fragile, carrying fear with them every moment of their lives, and refusing to let that fear control them. I understand now, Kefvarn said. The keeper nodded. Then you know what the Primarchs know. You know why gods learn to fear. Not the strong, not the powerful, not the immortal. She touched the ancient tablet, tracing the warning that had survived longer than civilizations. They fear the ones who have nothing to lose and everything to fight for. They fear those who love enough to die and hate enough to take their enemies with them. They fear humans. Yathvorn left the temple as the sun set over his homeworld. He had fought beside humans, and he had learned the answer to a question older than his species. Why do gods fear death when they cannot die? Because death is not the worst thing. The worst thing is facing an enemy who will never surrender, never break, never stop fighting until the stars themselves burn out. The worst thing is facing humanity. And now the gods knew it.